So picture this. You are at like 30,000 feet.
Okay.
You're halfway through a remarkably smooth flight. Maybe you're leaning back, you're sipping a coffee, finally getting to that book you've been meaning to read for months.
That's nice.
Right. The cabin is super quiet. And then, without like a single warning chime from the captain, the floor completely drops out from under you.
Oh, I hate that feeling. Just reading that makes my stomach drop.
Exactly. Your stomach violently leaps into your throat, the coffee hits the ceiling, and the entire plane just goes dead silent. I mean, you didn't ask for it. You couldn't possibly have prepared for it. But in a fraction of a second, you were trapped right in the middle of this terrifying, totally uncontrollable turbulence.
Yeah, that visceral loss of equilibrium. It's really one of the most universally unsettling human experiences,
Really?
One moment you possess this illusion of complete control over your environment, and then the very next second, you are entirely at the mercy of these kinetic forces that you can't even see, let alone actually manage.
And that sudden, uninvited free fall, that is exactly our starting point for today's deep dive. We are looking at a really specific devotional audio script today. It's from Throne Room Prayers1, and it's titled The Prayer, When the Storms Rise.
Right.
And right out of the gate, this piece targets that exact universal vulnerability we just talked about. It operates on this premise that in this life, severe storms, they just don't ask for permission.
No, they don't. They really just hit.
So our mission today is to unpack how this source takes a famous 2,000-year-old biblical narrative, specifically the story from the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus walks on water, and how it uses that to construct a really practical mental and spiritual framework for navigating chaos.
Which is so relevant for, anyone breathing today.
Right. So we're going to explore the mechanics of fear, how the brain actually processes feeling overwhelmed, and why the central metaphors in this devotional are just so remarkably effective at shifting someone from a total state of panic into like a state of agency.
Yeah, and the approach the text takes here is, it's actually deeply psychological. I mean, it takes something that is definitionally uncontrollable, like a severe storm, and systematically forces you, the listener, to reevaluate your relationship to that lack of control.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, by the end of the argument, the turbulence itself is reframed entirely.
Well, let's look at how the problem is defined right up front. Because these storms the source talks about, they are framed as the modern, everyday turbulence we all face. I mean, it isn't just talking about a literal hurricane here.
Right.
It explicitly calls out things like heavy financial burdens, sudden medical diagnoses, fractured relationships, and, those high-stakes decisions where every single option just feels impossible. The wind is fierce, the waves are high, and the chaos is acknowledged as undeniably real.
And grounding an ancient kind of mystical narrative in those very tangible modern anxieties, that's a really necessary bridge to build.
Awesome.
Well, because the anxiety of staring at, say, an overdrawn bank account or waiting for a biopsy result, that triggers the exact same evolutionary threat response in your body as staring down a physical tidal wave.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, exactly the same. The brain's alarm bells, they ring just as loudly, regardless of whether the threat is physical or, abstract.
Which makes the central metaphor so much more compelling, I think. So the script brings in Matthew 14.27. The disciples are trapped in this small boat in the middle of a violent sea at night, and they are absolutely terrified.
Yeah, legitimately fearing for their lives.
Exactly. And out of the darkness, Jesus speaks to them, saying, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." Now, consider the reality of being in a tiny wooden boat during a massive storm.
It sounds awful.
It is. It is a miserable, terrifying, violently unstable place to be. But compared to the raging, freezing water outside of it, that boat is your only safety. I mean, it's familiar. It has borders.
Right, and the psychological tension there is between predictable misery and unpredictable potential.
Ooh, predictable misery. I like that phrasing.
It's true. The brain inherently prefers a known threat to an unknown void. Always.
I see that dynamic everywhere in modern life, honestly.
Yeah.
The boat acts as this perfect stand-in for our everyday comfort zones of anxiety.
Oh, totally.
Like, think about someone choosing to stay in a deeply toxic workplace, or maybe a really stagnant, unfulfilling relationship. The situation is rocky, it causes them daily distress, and it feels like they're constantly bailing water just to survive.
Yeah, exhausting themselves.
But they will cling to that miserable boat rather than stepping over the edge into the totally unknown waters of, like, a career change or a breakup, the boat might be sinking, but at least it's their sinking boat.
Right. It's that old idea of clinging to familiar hells rather than risking unfamiliar heaven.
Wow, yeah.
And the source challenges that deeply ingrained instinct by fundamentally reframing the purpose of the chaos itself. Typically, when a crisis hits, our human reflex is to interpret it as a failure of the system.
Like, why is this happening to me?
Exactly. We view a storm as a sign that things have gone terribly wrong, or, in a spiritual context, as evidence of profound abandonment. Like we've been left alone.
But the devotional argues the inverse of that.
It does. It positions the storm not as a punishment, but as the mandatory environment for courage to actually develop. I mean, courage, by definition, cannot exist in a vacuum of comfort. You cannot practice bravery on a perfectly calm sea.
Right. And the phrase from the text that really stands out to me is the request for the faith to hear a voice above the roar of circumstances.
The roar of circumstances.
Yeah, anyone who has been through a major life crisis knows exactly what that roar sounds like.
Yep.
It is deafening.
It really is. And the psychological weight of that imagery is significant. Because when a crisis initiates, the roar of the problem consumes, all available cognitive bandwidth.
You literally can't think about anything else.
Exactly. Your brain becomes hyper-fixated on the threat. So the request to hear a voice above that roar, it is essentially a demand for a radical shift in attention. It lays the groundwork for the core argument of the whole piece, which is that survival in a storm is not dictated by the intensity of the weather, but entirely by where you anchor your focus.
Okay, and that brings up the really pivotal moment of action in the narrative. The text describes taking that literal step, leaving the familiar misery of the boat and stepping out onto the water toward the voice.
Boy, it's a big leap.
But what I appreciate is that the source avoids painting this as some, triumphant, flawless victory march where the hero just glides magically over the ocean. It immediately pivots to human fragility.
Yeah, the confession of inevitable failure is really what gives this whole framework its credibility, I think.
So true. The script actually reads, sometimes I take that first step in faith, but then I look around. I see the crashing waves of my responsibilities, and I feel the heavy winds of fear and expectation.
And there it is.
The moment the focus shifts from the promise to the problem, the sinking begins. Panic sets in. The rule laid out here is incredibly blunt. Focusing on the problem multiplies fear, while focusing on the promise multiplies faith.
And if we look at the actual mechanics of a panic attack, This is a perfect analog.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, when a person shifts their internal focus from a grounding goal like an anchor to the myriad of environmental threats surrounding them, the amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, completely hijacks the prefrontal cortex.
So logic just goes out the window.
Exactly. The crashing waves of responsibilities become literally all-consuming. The brain perceives imminent doom, and cognitive paralysis, or in this metaphor, sinking, is the immediate, unavoidable physiological result.
Okay, I have to push back on this concept just a little bit, though.
Sure.
On behalf of anyone listening who is currently dealing with a very real, tangible crisis, like let's say someone is drowning in massive, insurmountable financial debt.
A very real way.
Right. Is it actually practical or even safe to just divert your focus away from the giant crashing waves of a real-world problem? I mean, if you ignore mounting debt, it compounds and it ruins your life. So is this framework advocating for toxic positivity? Or are we just supposed to stick our heads in the sand and pretend the waves aren't 30 feet high?
That is the most critical tension to resolve here for sure, because advocating for delusion would be genuinely dangerous.
Right, exactly.
But a closer reading reveals a much more nuanced argument about the locus of focus rather than outright denial. The text explicitly notes later that the real danger is never the height of the waves, but taking your eyes off Christ.
Oh, I see.
It never claims the waves aren't colossal. It never minimizes the reality of the dead or the severity of the medical diagnosis. The threat is acknowledged as completely real. What is being challenged is the listener's all-consuming fixation on it.
Okay, so the distinction is really between acknowledging a severe problem and allowing that problem to monopolize your entire field of vision.
Think about the alternative. If you fixate exclusively on the sheer scale of an obstacle, you lose your bearing. The amygdala hijack occurs, like we talked about, and you lose the cognitive ability to actually navigate the situation.
When you freeze up.
You do. The text teaches that managing your focus, keeping your eyes firmly locked on the promise or the anchor, is what allows you to acknowledge the terrifying reality of the waves without letting them pull you under. You maintain a psychological tether to a stable point while you are actively dealing with the turbulent reality.
Maintaining a psychological tether. That is a great way to visualize it. And that leads directly into how the script handles the aftermath of losing that focus. Because the text really treats failure as a given.
Oh, absolutely. It's inevitable.
Right. We are going to look at the massive waves of our responsibilities. The amygdala is going to hijack our brains, and we're going to start sinking. It's just going to happen. So what happens in that moment of failure? The devotional points to this incredibly brief, desperate panic prayer from Matthew 14:30. It's just, Lord, save me.
Which, when you think about it, stripped of all theological pretense, is the ultimate distillation of vulnerability.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no time for eloquent speech when the water is literally rushing into your lungs. You just scream for help.
And the devotional spends a significant amount of time unpacking the very next verse, verse 31. It specifically hyper-focuses on the word immediately.
That word does a lot of heavy lifting here.
It does. It notes immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. The script argues passionately that God does not stand back with crossed arms, just waiting for you to prove your resilience. He doesn't watch you drown to teach you a lesson about losing focus. And he certainly doesn't expect you to somehow swim back to the boat on your own strength.
And removing that pressure of flawless performance, that is perhaps the most profound psychological release valve offered in this whole piece.
Definitely.
Because in many religious cultures, and frankly in secular hustle culture as well, there is this immense crushing pressure to maintain perfect faith or perfect stoicism.
Oh, yeah. Never let them see you sweat.
Right. You are not allowed to doubt. You are not allowed to show weakness, and you must power through the storm on your own. But by emphasizing the word immediately, the source offers a really radical grace. It completely dismantles the idea that rescue is conditional on your ability to hold it all together.
Okay, this makes me think of something. Have you ever been rock climbing and used a belayer?
I haven't done it myself, but I am familiar with the mechanics of a belay system, yes.
Okay, so when you are strapped into a harness, scaling this sheer, terrifying rock face, your partner is on the ground holding the rope through a friction device. That person is the belayer.
Got it.
So as you climb, your entire focus is supposed to be on the next handhold, right? But inevitably, human nature takes over. You look down, you see the massive drop, panic sets in, your grip fails, and you peel off the wall.
A terrifying moment.
Yes. But the beauty of climbing with an expert belayer is that falling does not equate to failing. The safety net is totally proactive. The absolute second you slip, the belayer locks the rope. The catch is immediate. You might drop an inch or two, your heart will definitely skip a beat, but you are held by an unyielding grip.
That is a brilliant parallel. It aligns perfectly with the mechanical argument of the text.
Right.
Yeah, it reassures the listener that surviving the ascent doesn't depend on an unbroken streak of perfect focus. It depends entirely on the unyielding grip of the one holding the rope.
Wow.
And for an individual experiencing severe information overload or decision fatigue or just deep burnout, that realization is transformative. You are relieved of the impossible burden of saving yourself. You only have to ask for the catch.
And the script actually systematizes this concept by outlining 3 distinct spiritual realities toward the end of the piece. It's almost like a blueprint for building this resilient mindset we've been talking about.
Let's hear them.
So the first reality it presents is that storms are not evidence of absence. They are the exact stage chosen to manifest power in unprecedented ways.
Reframing the chaos again. It forcibly removes the individual from the role of victim and places them on a stage constructed for empowerment. That's powerful.
Very. And the second reality builds on our discussion of the amygdala. The danger is never the height of the waves, but the loss of focus. Focusing on the problem multiplies fear. Focusing on the promise multiplies faith.
Right, so the internal response to the external stimuli dictates the outcome. The waves don't drown you. The paralysis caused by staring at the waves drowns you.
Exactly. And the third reality is the belayer locking the rope. Rescue is instant. It is always just one genuine cry for help away.
And integrating those 3 realities provides a really robust mental model for navigating acute stress. You understand the utility of the chaos, you actively manage your locus of focus within it, and you operate with the absolute certainty that your safety net will engage the very moment you falter.
Which brings us to the ultimate philosophical conclusion of the deep dive today. How does adopting this model actually change how we live tomorrow morning?
That's the real test, right? Application.
Exactly. The devotional ends with a thought that completely redefines the concept of stability. It states, "The same Jesus who has the power to calm the storm with a single word often prefers to give you the power to walk right on top of it."
Oh, that's really profound.
I really want to linger on that for a second. The entity with the power to simply turn off the storm, just flick a switch, chooses instead to give you the ability to walk on top of the turbulence. True stability, according to this source, does not depend on a calm sea. It depends on the one who holds your hand while you walk through the chaos.
Unpacking that statement reveals a direct challenge to a really deeply rooted human desire. I mean, we spend our entire lives relentlessly pursuing a frictionless
I'm
existence.
guilty. We all do it.
We want the environment to be perfectly controlled so that we never have to experience discomfort.
We really do. We expend a massive amount of emotional and spiritual energy just praying for the circumstances to smooth out. We pray for the toxic boss to get fired, or for the massive bill to magically disappear, or just for the traffic to clear up before we get to the exit.
Exactly.
We are utterly obsessed with acquiring a calm sea, rather than asking for the resilience required to handle the turbulence.
Because we demand that the environment change so that we don't have to adapt. It's human nature. But the framework presented here proposes a model of resilient stability. It suggests that true peace, which, the text describes as a peace that surpasses all understanding, that peace cannot be found in the absence of trouble.
Right.
It can only be discovered during the chaos. It is the profound realization that a person can be completely surrounded by heavy winds and crashing waves and still remain fundamentally secure because of their anchor.
It really highlights the stark difference between a fragile peace and an anti-fragile peace.
Oh, I like that term, anti-fragile.
Yeah. A fragile peace is entirely dependent on perfect external conditions. It shatters the millisecond the wind starts blowing. But an anti-fragile peace actually requires the wind to prove its strength. You can't know you can walk on water until you are standing on it in a literal hurricane.
Finding a calm center, not by escaping the storm, but by moving deliberately through it with a structurally sound support system, that's a huge paradigm shift.
It is. Looking back at the arc of this deep dive, we started with the source material from Throne Room Prayers1 that tackles the terrifying unpredictability of life's sudden storms. We explored that deeply human instinct to cling to our miserable, familiar boats rather than face the unknown.
And we tracked how the devotional completely inverts the narrative of fear, transforming the terrifying storm from a signal of doom into a necessary theater for growth and courage.
We broke down the practical mechanics of survival, intentionally shifting cognitive focus away from the paralyzing height of the waves and trusting in the immediate unconditional rescue mechanism of the belayer when we inevitably slip. It really is a powerful, comprehensive framework for anyone feeling overwhelmed. And just to impartially note how the original audio concludes, it wraps up by inviting listeners to actually connect with the Throne Room Prayers1 community.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they encourage their audience to subscribe, to share the framework with anyone currently navigating their own heavy winds, and to leave personal prayer requests in the comments, reinforcing the idea that surviving turbulence is often a shared community effort.
Which is vital, recognizing that isolation amplifies panic, while shared experience and communal support are, integral components of navigating the unknown.
So going back to that feeling at 70,000 feet, the sudden drop, the spilled coffee, the silent panic, we spend our entire lives trying to engineer those drops out of existence.
We do, which actually leaves us with a really provocative question to consider long after this discussion ends.
Lay at me.
Well, modern society is increasingly obsessed with engineering absolute comfort. I mean, we have apps to avoid traffic, algorithms to curate our entertainment, and smart thermostats to ensure we never feel a single degree of chill.
Very true.
We are systematically eliminating friction from our daily lives. But if true, anti-fragile stability is only forged by walking through the storm, are we inadvertently engineering a world so comfortable that the slightest unexpected turbulence will completely destroy us?